Hey everyone, first of all, I just wanted to say I made my first sale ever from the Pocket Shop. I just want to give a big shout out to whoever you are. Teespring doesn't share your information with me, but I thank you and appreciate it so much. It means a lot to me and goes a long way to supporting the channel. Just wanted to say that you're friggin' awesome. Anyway, without further ado, let's get on with the stories. As always, if you like my content, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. You can also support the channel by purchasing some merchandise from the link in the description. Thanks for listening. Eyes in the Darkness. A couple of years ago, my cousins and I made a trip out to one of their friends' private land to do some fishing. The property was in the countryside and at least an hour's drive from where we all lived. I fell asleep on the way there since the trip started in the middle of the night. It was my first time there, so I didn't know what to expect. I woke up when we reached the place and helped the others unload our gear. The first thing I noticed was how foggy it was. I couldn't see 5 feet in front of me. We were all strapped with headlamps instead of carrying flashlights, so we could be hands-free. We quickly unloaded everything, and I followed the others to our first spot. It wasn't so bad, since there were 3 of us together. About 20 minutes later, after our first cast, they decided to split up. I felt uneasy about the decision, so I asked, "Y'all think that's a good idea?" "It'll be fine," Law said, reeling in his cast. "You're not scared, are you?" Ning asked, already gathering his things. Not at all," I said, laughing nervously. "Any volunteers on holding Pow's hand?" Ning asked, no one in particular, and both my cousins laughed. "I'm good, y'all go ahead, I'll stay here," I replied. "Call if you need anything," Law said, walking away with his rod and tackle in hand. I watched as the light from their headlamps disappeared into the fog. My imagination started to drift, and I became paranoid at every single sight and sound, glancing around my surroundings every 30 seconds. My heart wasn't even into fishing anymore. I was on my own for about 10 minutes when the beam on my headlamp swept past half a dozen pair of glowing neon green eyes glaring at me. They must have been about 20 yards away. My heart sunk into my stomach, and I froze. My blood turned to ice. Goose flesh formed on my skin. The hair on the back of my neck rose. My heart began to drum wildly. I swallowed the lump in my throat as the eyes began to slowly creep toward me. I wanted to yell for help, but was paralyzed out of fear. The eyes kept coming at me without abandonment. Then the subtle sound of a bell snapped me back to reality. I wasn't sure how long I'd been froze there, but it could have just been 30 seconds. The silhouettes of the creatures became more apparent as they got closer. They stopped about 10 yards from me. It was then I realized those eyes belonged to a herd of cows, and I let out a huge sigh of relief. I never told my cousins about how I almost damned near pooped my pants over some cows. If I did, I'd never hear the end of it. They're gone. It was midnight, and there was no one else around. My brother and I were fishing at our secret spot. We already caught a few fishes, though. It was nothing to write home about, just some crappie and bluegill. We were fishing about 10 yards away from shore and had our catches stored in a bucket there. My brother returned to shore saying he wanted to try a different lure. "Hey, they're gone," he called out to me. I glanced over my shoulder with my hand still working the reel. "What's gone?" "Our fish, they're gone," he yelled. "Hold on, I'm coming," I replied, curious to see what happened. I finished reeling my lure back, then made my way to my brother. "What happened?" I asked. I came back and was looking through the tackle box when I glanced into the bucket and saw all our catch was gone, he replied. I scratched my head, inspecting the scene. There was still water in the bucket, no signs of a spill. I scanned the area and didn't see anyone else around. "All right, let's get out of here," I said. "I'm sort of creeped out now." My brother didn't argue. We gathered our things and left. We fished during all hours of the day, and never had we experienced anything like that. We still go back there, just not after dark. The Old Bridge. Because of my work schedule, I fished during all hours of the day, often out of my kayak, never seen or heard anything out of the ordinary. There was a stream that connected to a lake I often fish at. Where the stream joined the lake is an old, decrepit mine track on a bridge, no longer in use, and the city blocked the entrance to the mines. Not sure how long it had been there, but part of the bridge had collapsed from wear and tear. Sometimes teenagers and young people illegally hung out there, as evidence from the amount of graffiti and trash on the bridge. I was on the lake facing the old bridge during one of my night fishes. Something lit up from the bridge above me. There were 3 transparent figures slowly making their way toward the side that had collapsed. The figures were dressed like they were from the 1800s. It looked like a man and 2 women. The man had a lantern while the women accompanied him. They never seemed to notice me. The figures vanished when they reached the end of the bridge. I wouldn't say I was scared, more like awestruck, since I've never seen anything like it. I returned a few times after that, but haven't seen anything since. Voices. There was a popular lake close to home my friend Jake and I usually fish at. One day after work, we decided to do some fishing there. Since we didn't have to work the next day, we stayed late into the night. We didn't catch any trophies, pretty much just catch and release. Jake and I had fun regardless. Because we kept moving and fishing in several spots, we were pretty far from our vehicle. It was probably between 11 to 12 a.m. when I heard voices from behind us. They sounded distant, so I didn't pay it any attention, thinking it was just another group of fishermen. Then the voices got closer. The language didn't sound familiar to me at all. It sounded like there was a group of them having a conversation mixed in with singing, chanting, or crying. There were some yelling and hollering as well. Jake and I looked at each other. "Yo, you hear that?" I asked. "Yeah," he replied. "Sounds like a group of drunks or people high on drugs." "Does that sound like Spanish to you?" "Don't think so. Doesn't sound like anything I recognize," Jake answered. We each reeled in our lures and remained silent as we listened to the mysterious voices. They got closer and closer until they were about a few feet away. I ducked behind the tall grass, and Jake followed my lead. Goosebumps crawled all through my skin, and every hair on my body stood on end. The commotion passed by us as if there was a crowd of people, but there was no one in sight. Just a bunch of voices, singing, chanting, screaming, and hollering. I held my breath, but my heart drummed loudly, threatening to expose me to whatever those beings were. An eternity passed until the voices trailed off. When it did, Jake and I immediately grabbed our gear and raced back to our car. I didn't bother to look back in case I saw something I regretted. As we drove home, Jake and I discussed the unusual encounter. We both agreed it was one of the spookiest things we've ever experienced. We also agreed the voices were most likely speaking some sort of Native American language. "They sounded like Tatanka," Jake said. "I wonder if they were ghosts of some war party from long ago." I laughed. Good old Jake always had a way with analogies. Sometimes I couldn't tell if he was being serious or not. "I don't know, man," I said. All I knew was I did not have a good feeling about it. I was so spooked my body was still trembling and filled with goosebumps when I got home. I became sick for a few days and only felt better after my parents had someone do a spirit call. I never went back there again.